Hi, I'm Natalie Dixon, and this is my story, That's Not Science, which was inspired by asters and goldenrods, which is from the story Braiding Seagrass. Once upon a time, there was a young girl. She was a curious young girl. This girl's name was Eve. Everywhere Eve went, she would ask questions. She would ask questions to her friends, parents, and teachers. Eve really liked science, so she would always ask the most questions in that subject. Half the time, the teacher would say, "That's not science." So after a while, Eve stopped asking. Eve had lots of friends at school, but she enjoyed being alone. Every day after school, Eve would walk to her favorite spot about 3 blocks away from the school. Every day, she would sit in the same spot under a big pine tree surrounded by these beautiful purple and gold flowers, which she later found out are called asters and goldenrods. Eve didn't know why she picked there, other than the flowers were pretty, but something about it intrigued her, and it intrigued her enough that she sat there almost every day for 2 years. During those 2 years, Eve never got less curious, probably even more curious. She noticed that any time she saw goldenrods and asters, they were next to each other, but she never thought much of it because they were beautiful next to each other. One day, Eve was sitting in her usual spot, and she noticed something she had never noticed before. She noticed that were a bunch of bees sitting on her purple and gold flowers. On the other side of the tree, there were white and blue flowers, but they had no bees on them. Eve was curious why all of the bees were on her favorite flowers when there is barely any room for them and lots of other different flowers close by. Instead of being scared of the bees, Eve thought it was kind of cool that they also liked her purple and gold flowers. So she let them be. Eve left that day wondering if those bees would also come back to that spot just like her. The next day, when she got there, there was no sight of bees. But after 20 minutes of homework, the bees arrived. Just as they did yesterday, they all went to the asters and goldenrods. Eve watched them as they pollinated with her favorite flowers, and they continued on their way. Eve was fascinated. As years went on, Eve was still interested in plants and nature, but she also started to pick up on art. She liked both art and science, but she knew she would eventually have to pick one over the other. Eve's parents always said, "Art and science are so different," but Eve didn't think so. When it came time, Eve picked science, but she still had a passion for art. One day, Eve finally asked one of her artist buddies about the power of purple and gold. They sent her right to the color wheel. They said these two are complementary colors, as different in nature as could be. In composing a palette, putting them together makes each more vivid. Just a touch of one will bring out the other. This explains why Eve was intrigued to these flowers. But she was always told art and science are different, so she still didn't know why the bees also liked the purple and gold flowers. About a week later, Eve was in science class. She learned bees see many flowers differently than humans do due to their perception of additional spectra, such as ultraviolet radiation. The teacher later explained that goldenrods and asters are one of the only flowers that appear very similar to bee eyes and human eyes. The teacher explained that those flowers growing together both receive more pollination visits than they would if they were growing alone. Eve finally understood why she always saw these flowers together and why the bees also picked her flowers. Eve almost jumped out of her chair with joy. She was happy that those bees got to see these beautiful flowers the same way she did. She knew that she was right all along. Science and art aren't so different after all.